President Bush arrives in Hungary, the first American president ever to do so, after a moving afternoon with the men and women of solidarity in the Polish city of Gdansk.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, reporting tonight from Budapest.
Good evening. When President Bush arrived here in Budapest tonight, he came to another country in the Soviet bloc, which is moving vigorously in the direction of democracy. Hungarians, like Poles, have high expectations of Mr. Bush and a very clear need for U.S. support. Here at the very center of Europe, with the Soviets and an unfriendly Romania to the east, unfriendly Czechoslovakia to the north, and a virtually open border to the west, Hungarians are also trying to find the right balance between political and economic reform. In Poland today, the absolute highlight of the president's trip so far, an emotional and invigorating visit to the city where, as the president said, the dream will not die. Here's ABC's Britt Hume.
In the shadow of the towering monument to the Solidarity labor movement, a huge throng turned out beside the Gdansk shipyard today. They had come to hear Solidarity's founder, Lech Wałęsa, and his guest, the President of the United States. The President spoke to them of Poland's long-denied dream of freedom and a better life, and of renewed hope it may now at last come true.
Today, brave workers of Gdansk stand beside this monument as a beacon of hope, a symbol of that dream. And the brave workers of Gdansk know Poland is not alone. America stands with you.
Long live Bush, they chanted. The president's speech in this bastion of anti-government feeling was not carried on state-run Polish television. And oddly, his words were not actually heard at the scene itself. Instead, the workers heard only a simultaneous translation. It did not dampen the enthusiasm for his message, which contained praise bordering on flattery for the Polish people. He did not fail to mention Pope John Paul.
And just as the Son of Poland has shown the world the heights of spiritual leadership in the Vatican, so the people of Poland can show the world what a free people with commitment and energy can accomplish.
Earlier, his motorcade had brought the President and Mrs. Bush to Wałęsa's modest stone and stucco house for lunch. As they ate in the small dining room, Wałęsa said he felt, quote, almost embarrassed. Outside later, Wałęsa had a revised version of the $10 billion aid plan he wants for the Polish economy. Instead of direct aid, Wałęsa said he meant only opening branches of Western banks with $10 billion on deposit. Before he left Gdansk, the president promised Wałęsa he would take it up at the Paris Economic Summit later this week.
And I will be talking about it 2 days from now.
The president got to Budapest this evening in a driving rain and decided to tear up his opening remarks in favor of a briefer greeting. Afterward, he also decided that one of those who had braved the rain needed his raincoat more than he did. That was a generous gesture, but a gesture nonetheless. Appropriate, perhaps, to a trip where the emphasis is intended to be more on American moral than economic support. Peter?
It is inevitable in this media age that as we compare the Soviet Union and the United States, we also compare the men who lead them. And like it or not, in Eastern Europe as well as in the West, personality is important. With the exception of his visit to Gdansk today, George Bush has not appeared to attract the kind of following that Mikhail Gorbachev has. Joining us with some observations on that subject is our national security correspondent, John McWheffy. Why do you think George Bush didn't get big crowds in Poland, or for that matter in Hungary, the first evening?
Well, first of all, he hasn't been in office nearly as long as Mikhail Gorbachev has, and he is offering a different kind of vision than Gorbachev is. Gorbachev is saying, I'm willing to dramatically change my system, and what George Bush is saying is, if you want to change your system politically and economically, then we in the United States are willing to offer some help. It's an important difference.
But George Bush does not appear to attract the kind of following that says they got to touch him to be inspired by him. Do you think that makes any difference in this part of the world?
Well, George Bush, it does make a difference. Certainly public relations makes a difference. Mikhail Gorbachev has proved that, Peter, time and time again. And George Bush can't compete with Mikhail Gorbachev with that kind of competition.
With any consequence to the United States, then?
Well, but where he can compete is with what the United States has to offer. The United States can help bankroll many of the important aspects of the programs that Mikhail Gorbachev wants, and that is what is key here.
John, thanks very much. John McCreffy, our national security correspondent. And one of the things we can say about Eastern and Central Europe, which is where we are tonight, it is the United States most people wish to emulate, not the Soviet Union. Later in our broadcast from here, trying to judge what difference George Bush can actually make in Poland and in Hungary, and elsewhere overseas, the great British actor Sir Laurence Olivier has died. In a moment, Diane Sawyer in New York with some of the day's other news.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings in Hungary. Brought to you by Reach.